Ever get that feeling? Like you're busy, you have choices, but real deep freedom feels, I don't know, just out of reach somehow. Or maybe how uncomfortable truths, the really big ideas, just seem to get smoothed over, absorbed even by the very system they're supposed to challenge. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today you've sent us a really foundational text. It's some key excerpts from Herbert Marcuse's 1964 classic, One-Dimensional Man. And our mission, our goal for this deep dive is to really unpack Marcuse's pretty powerful diagnosis of what he called advanced industrial society. We won't get a handle on how he saw it shaping, well, not just what we do, but our thoughts, our desires, the whole package. We'll dig into his sometimes surprising claims about freedom and culture, even language itself, and hopefully see what insights that offers you for understanding the world we're in today.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive in.
Right. So One-Dimensional Man, published in '64, but it really captures that feeling, that kind of stifling conformity of the late 50s, early 60s. And Marcuse's core argument is basically this. Contemporary Western societies, and this was kind of radical, he included both capitalist and communist systems, were developing these new, really subtle ways of dominating people, new forms of social control. It's a major critique of an era that he saw as actively closing off the very possibility of real fundamental change, what he calls qualitative social change.
And that term he uses, one-dimensionality, it's key how he uses it, isn't it? It's not like, he's not saying society is just one flat thing. He uses it more like an adjective, right?
Yeah.
One-dimensional man, one-dimensional society, one-dimensional thought.
Huh.
Which seems important because he's highlighting like a deficiency, a lacking state.
Exactly, yeah. That distinction is crucial. He's pointing out what's missing, what's been lost. He says the singular achievement, maybe ironically, of this advanced industrial society is its incredible ability to contain that kind of deep qualitative change. He saw this thing happening where an overriding interest in the preservation and improvement of the institutional status quo unites the former antagonists. So old conflicts like, capital versus labor, bourgeoisie versus proletariat, they were being integrated, smoothed over. He talks about the collusion of business and labor within the strong state, like U.S. unions and big corporations lobbying together for missile contracts.
Wow.
Yeah, the union ends up looking almost indistinguishable from the corporation.
That really turns the usual narrative on its head, doesn't it? Labor and capital working together to preserve the system. And he connects this to the state itself, this blend of, what did he call it, the welfare state and the warfare state.
That's it. A society of total mobilization. It cleverly combines the welfare state providing some social safety nets with the warfare state. This permanent mobilization against the enemy, real or imagined, it acts as a huge stimulus of production and employment, which in turn keeps the standard of living high.
Okay, so the constant state of alert, whether it's Cold War or something else, actually fuels the economy and keeps things stable.
Precisely. And this is where it gets really interesting regarding freedom. Because while freedom from want, having basic needs met, starts to seem possible, maybe for the first time, those traditional liberties we value, freedom of thought, speech, even free enterprise, they start to lose their critical edge, their power to challenge. The old fear, the liberty to work or to starve, might fade, potentially opening up this amazing realm of freedom beyond necessity. But instead of seizing that, society imposes its own needs, economic and political requirements for defense and expansion onto both our work time and our free time.
So just as we might get free from basic survival needs, the system finds new ways to occupy us, to direct our lives.
Exactly. It leads to this non-terroristic, he stresses that, but still totalitarian kind of economic and technical coordination. It works by manipulating our needs, often creating them, and it essentially prevents real opposition from even taking root.
That raises a huge question then, doesn't it? If our needs are being manipulated, what does freedom even mean in that context?
That's the core of his critique, I think.
But how does this play out on the ground? Like in factories, workplaces, you mentioned mechanization changing things.
Right. He talks about the ever more complete mechanization of labor. Skills shift, of the head rather than of the hand. More logic, less craft. Workers become more like supervisors and regulators. He even cites this sociologist who observed a kind of drugging rhythm among machine operators, but also this strong in-group feeling, which leads, surprisingly, to workers developing a vested interest in the establishment.
Like the example you mentioned. Refinery workers checking the company books.
Yeah, the Caltex workers meticulously going over the financial management like they were, like they owned the place, almost.
So the work itself, the structure of it, kind of aligns the workers' interests with the company's interests, subtly integrating them.
That's the idea. The apparatus imposes its requirements and people internalize them. And this isn't just about work or politics. Marcuse saw this same integrating, flattening process happening in the realm of culture, too. He called it the conquest of the unhappy consciousness. Basically, the tension, the antagonism between culture and social reality gets smoothed out. But not by rejecting high culture or art. No, it's much cleverer. It happens through their wholesale incorporation into the established order.
How does that work? Incorporation.
Well, through reproduction and display on a massive scale. Think about how easily art and ideas are packaged and sold today. They become instruments of social cohesion.
Okay, so like using classical music in adverts or revolutionary slogans on T-shirts, that kind of thing.
Exactly. He says, the greatness of a free literature and art, the ideals of humanism, are important items in the competitive struggle between East and West. Think Cold War context. They speak heavily against the present forms of communism, and they are daily administered and sold.
Wow. Administered and sold.
Yeah, he puts it bluntly. The music of the soul is also the music of salesmanship. Exchange value, not truth value, counts.
So art that might once have challenged us, made us uncomfortable, made us think, it just becomes another commodity.
Precisely. Its truth, which may be pointing to a higher or different reality, is deprived of its antagonistic force. It loses its bite.
And this connects to another really famous, maybe slightly notorious Marcuse idea, repressive desublimation.
Yeah.
That sounds complex.
It is a powerful concept, yeah. It sounds counterintuitive, right? Repressive desublimation. Sublimation is basically channeling primal urges, like sexual desire, into socially acceptable or higher forms like art or intense work. It creates tension, potentially critical tension. What Marcuse saw was society offering an institutionalized desublimation. It allows more direct gratification, especially sexually.
So more sexual freedom, how is that repressive?
Because, he argues, this freedom becomes a market value and a factor of social mores. Sex gets integrated into work and public relations, think advertising, workplace dynamics, and it's made more susceptible to controlled satisfaction. It becomes managed pleasure.
Okay, so the satisfaction is allowed, even encouraged, but in ways that don't actually challenge the system.
Exactly. It reduces the need for sublimation, lowers that critical tension between our deep desires and what society permits. And the punchline is, pleasure, thus adjusted, generates submission. We become content in our managed pleasures, less likely to question the bigger picture.
That is, yeah, that's unsettling. This idea of a happy consciousness, being happy, but in a way that's actually blind or complicit.
Deeply unsettling. He says the happy consciousness has no limits. It arranges games with death and disfiguration in which fun, teamwork, and strategic importance mix in rewarding social harmony.
Games with death, what's he referring to there?
He gives this vivid example of the Rand Corporation's safe war games back then, strategic Air Force effectiveness games. He describes how, in these simulations, the world becomes a map, missiles merely symbols, and wars just plans and calculations written down on paper.
So it makes horrific possibilities seem abstract, manageable, almost unreal.
Exactly. It allows military planners to get valuable synthetic experience without risk. It shows how this kind of technological, rational thinking can sanitize the most awful realities. The horror is abstracted away.
And this connects to language too, right? The way we talk about things actually shapes how we think about them.
Absolutely. Marcuse saw the language of administration, of the system, as actively working towards identification and unification. It promotes positive thinking and doing, and attacks those transcendent, critical notions, ideas that point beyond the status quo.
He called it Orwellian language, didn't he?
Yes, where words like freedom or democracy get redefined to mean conformity within the existing system, even if the reality is the opposite of the word's original meaning.
Can you give an example of how that works, how language gets manipulated?
Sure. He talks about the functionalization of language repelling nonconformist ideas. Think about how certain labels or hyphenated terms can frame things, or abbreviations. He uses NATO or AFL-CIO as examples.
NATO? How is that loaded?
Well, he the abbreviated spells out a treaty specifically among North Atlantic nations. Saying the full name might make you pause and ask, wait, why are Greece and Turkey members then? They aren't North Atlantic. The abbreviation helps repress undesired questions.
Ah, I see. The shortcut bypasses the potential critique.
Right. The meaning becomes fixed, doctored, loaded, as he puts it. It discourages deeper thought.
And this relates to how problems themselves are framed, this therapeutic function.
Yes, the therapeutic function of thought. He looked at things like industrial sociology or public opinion studies. He argued their operational concepts, the way they defined and measured things, often took on a political function. They tended to analyze people and their problems in a way that implicitly aimed for adjustment to his society, therapy as conformity.
Can you give an example of that?
He critiques the famous Hawthorne work studies, where researchers investigated worker complaints. Vague, potentially systemic complaints like the washrooms are unsanitary got translated into very specific, manageable incidents. The wash bowl had some dirt in it on one particular day.
Okay, so it takes a general grievance that might point to a bigger issue.
And breaks it down into isolated, fixable little problems. It dissolves the sweeping indictment and makes it seem like an individual issue or a minor operational flaw, not something fundamentally wrong with the conditions or the system.
So even trying to study problems empirically can end up reinforcing the status quo if you're not careful about how you frame the questions.
That's his point. Empiricism itself isn't neutral. It can serve an ideological function, intentionally or not.
Okay, so, wow. If the system is this good at containing change, integrating dissent, shaping our pleasures, even controlling language, Marcuse himself asked the big question, doesn't he? How can the administered individuals liberate themselves from themselves as well as from their masters? How do you break that cycle?
It's the crucial question, and his answer isn't simple. He argues that critical thought itself needs different tools. Philosophic terms must be other than the ordinary ones, he says, in order to elucidate the full meaning of the latter. You need a different language to critique the dominant one.
A language that isn't already co-opted.
Exactly. Critical thought needs to be a historical consciousness. It has to see the present system not as natural or inevitable, but as one possibility among others, a product of history. It has to break open a closed universe of discourse. He champions negative thinking, not pessimism, but the ability to see the irrational in the rational, the hidden mystification in the reality.
Seeing what's wrong with what seems normal. Refusing to just accept things as they are.
Precisely. It's about maintaining that critical distance.
And he talks about technology playing a role in a potential liberation, too, but in a transformed way, this catastrophe of liberation.
Yes, it's a fascinating idea. He envisions a possible new technology, one designed not for efficiency or control or profit, but for pacified existence. A technology where technics is itself the instrumentality of pacification, organon of the art of life.
Organon of the art of life. What does that mean, practically?
It suggests technology could be fundamentally repurposed. Instead of driving production and consumption, it could be geared towards fostering creativity, reducing toil, enhancing human relationships, enabling a truly fulfilling life beyond just material accumulation.
So a complete rethinking of what technology is for.
A catastrophic transformation, he calls it, of our current technological rationality. A shift towards a world where the main struggle isn't just mastering nature, but overcoming the destructive aspects of our own society. And struggle with nature is increasingly a struggle with his society.
But if everyone inside the system is, well, integrated, where does the energy for such a catastrophic change come from? Who are the agents?
That's where Marcuse offers a sliver of, perhaps difficult, hope. He acknowledges that his own dialectical analysis seems to point towards hopelessness within the closed system. But then he points outwards, to the margins. He talks about a substratum of the outcasts and outsiders, the exploited and persecuted of other races and other colors, the unemployed and the unemployable.
People completely outside the mainstream bargain of comfort and consumption.
Yes. He argues their very existence, their situation, constitutes an opposition. Their opposition is revolutionary, even if their consciousness is not. Because their struggle hits the system from without, it can't be easily absorbed or deflected by the usual mechanisms. It is an elementary force which violates the rules of the game and, in doing so, reveals it as a rigged game.
So hope lies with those who have the least stake in the current game, those who literally can't or won't play by its rules.
That seems to be his final indication. It's not a guaranteed path, but it's where he sees the potential for genuine rupture.
And he ends with that really powerful quote from Walter Benjamin, doesn't he?
He does. It is only for the sake of those without hope that hope is given to us. It's a profound, almost paradoxical statement.
Suggesting that maybe recognizing the depth of the problem, even the seeming hopelessness for those fully integrated, is the first step, and that refusing to just go along.
Refusing to play the game may be the fact which marks the beginning of the end of a period. It places agency in that act of refusal, however small it might seem.
Wow. Lots to think about there.
Definitely. And it leaves us with a lingering question, I think. If Marcuse is right, even partly, about the one-dimensional man being sort of contentedly enslaved by the systems providing comfort, what is the true cost of all our modern convenience and security? And maybe more importantly, what would genuine freedom actually demand from us now in a world that feels even more integrated, more technologically mediated than Marcuse's?
That's a heavy question to leave our listeners with. We've really only scratched the surface of Marcuse's ideas today, deep as they are. But hopefully, this deep dive has given you some serious food for thought. We definitely encourage you to reflect on this, maybe see how it resonates or doesn't with your own experience, and perhaps even seek out One-Dimensional Man itself if you're curious. It's not an easy read, but it's certainly provocative. Until next time, keep digging deeper.